Hey, welcome back to another video. So in this video, I'm just going to show you the design and print of a Dungeons and Dragons cage. So recently I started playing Dungeons and Dragons with my wife. We picked up a set at a local store that had a bunch of figurines and uh, markers and dungeon tiles and all the fun stuff. And for anybody that's played before, you'll know that your character can be doomed to a cage where you can't move until you attack it or another player attacks it. So basically, I decided that instead of just pretending that there was a cage, I would design and print one. And so I've decided to kind of just freestyle one. I looked online and didn't really see anything that I liked. Um, Actually, the only thing that I really found, at least on Thingiverse, was a cage for the die itself. So yeah, so what I'm doing here is just a simple kind of a rectangle, but at the top it's cut off with a dome, just a simple curve. And I'm just playing with the angle here until I get it to something that feels cagey. And so started out with a simple sketch. I didn't do a component or anything fancy like that. It's not really needed here. Very simply, it's going to probably be a one-time print type of thing. So I've got my sketch made, a basic shape for the profile of the cage. And what I need to do now is a two-sided extrude. And the reason I do two-sided is because I'm going to do a revolve, or I'm sorry, a pattern rather. And I want it to be off the center of this sketch, outwards in either direction, to total 2.5 millimeters. And I just come up with that measurement based off of measuring the characters that we have, the thickness of their arms, their heads, stuff like that. Try to make it somewhat realistic scale. And so here I'm going to do the pattern. And if you've never used the pattern before, it will save you a ton of time if you're creating like turbines or Dungeons and Dragons cages, all kinds of crazy stuff. Highly recommend you checking it out in further detail. So here I'm just deciding what kind of looks right. I end up going up 2 more, so 20 total. And what I decided is after I did the pattern, it wasn't hollow, and the cage needs to be able to sit atop of the character. And so I'm going back to the sketch here and creating an offset for the outer edge. And what that's going to allow me to do is create a cage that has a hollow inside so that it can be placed on top of a character. And that other shape there was a first attempt, and I offset inwards to the sketch, which removed some of uh, the internal open area that I actually needed for the characters to fit. Our kit came with a bunch of different characters that had different positions that basically I wanted to make sure the cage would fit all the characters and maybe some that we'd buy in the future. So here when I did the outward offset of the outer edge, I saw that it didn't create a square line up at the top. And I want the top to be completely solid whenever I do my pattern. So I just cleared that up with a line, a couple of lines to make it 90 degrees. And so now I'm going and editing the pattern, I'm sorry, the extrude rather, and setting it to that new offset part of the sketch that I just created. And so now that it's done, you can see we've got a cage that's hollow. And so the next part here is creating some pieces that are both design and also functional that can give us some rigidity for when we print and also when the item's being handled or stored. And so the idea here is create something that resembles like bands on a cage, like I don't know, in old pirate movies and stuff. You see these wooden or steel rod cages that have more steel rod or whatever that connects all the bars together so that they can't be bent. And so that's kind of what I'm going for here. But like I said, it serves two purposes. So I do another offset of a circle to 2.5 millimeters so it matches the thickness of the bars. And I mess it up the first time when I do the extrusion. I did a cut. For some reason, Autodesk Fusion 360, when you select to extrude, it starts out as a new body operation, but then when you pick a length of extrusion, it goes to cut instead. Honestly, I really hate that. I wish I could change it to join instead by default, or at least a new body. But anyway, so that worked out pretty good, and so I'm going to do one more, I decided, towards the top. So I do that by creating a offset plane from the bottom. And this whole design's freestyle, like I said, so I just kind of picked an arbitrary height. No real particular reason for 48 millimeters. And I'm just kind of rotating it to see, if it looks good. And so now that I have my offset plane, I can create another circle at that plane instead. And what that'll do is make sure the sketch is at the right height in the 3D space for where I want the actual extrusion to take place when I'm done with the sketch. And so I just repeat the entire process as below and create a circle with an offset, essentially a circle within a circle. And I pick that band area there. And I'm going to do another extrusion at 2.5 mils. And yet again, it switches to cut. So annoying. Comment down below if you know a way to switch that. Admittedly, I haven't looked at the preferences of Fusion 360 to see if there's a way to set it a different default option. So by this point, you could probably stop here and have a pretty decent cage-like thing to use. But I decided I wanted to go a little bit more and add some bolt heads or what have you, pegs, use your imagination here. I didn't go crazy with it. And honestly, this feature is so small, I'm not even sure how well it will 3D print. But basically what I'm doing here is creating a circle, and it went to the inside of the cage instead of the outside when I added it, but it doesn't really matter. When you extrude, as long as you set to join instead of cut, it'll end up being the same difference. So just kind of eyeballing how much of the bolt head or peg I want to stick out from the sides. And if you do something like this, you got to keep in mind that the capabilities of your printer. So since this is a slight overhang, and it's also not sticking out very far, I didn't really plan for that feature to show up. I thought if it did, that would be great. If it doesn't, not a big deal. And so once I have that done, I'm doing another pattern. And if you didn't know this, you can actually select features, so extrusions, a bunch of other stuff. And then you can revolve it. I'm sorry, pattern it. I always get those two confused because revolve and pattern both go in a circle, but whatever. So I match the number to 20, the same as the amount of bars we have, and hit OK. And now we got these cool little bolt head looking things on this, metal plating that goes around all the bars. So I decided after the fact that I forgot to do the bottom. Realistically, I could have done these at the same time, the top and the bottom. I didn't feel like going back and changing it. So just doing the exact same thing as I did for the top one. Just adding the circle, extruding it, and doing a pattern at 20 to match the amount of bars the cage has. Picking the feature, doing the revolve, setting it to 20, and everything looks good, as expected. Nearly it worked up top. And so at this point, yet again, it's probably another good stopping point for a lot of people. Everything looks good. We only have one body, which is what I wanted. But around this point, I decide that I want to add some kind of adornment up top. So the first thing I do is set up a fillet on all these edges. You don't have to do this, but I thought it would kind of help give it more of a realistic look. A lot of old pirate cages and things are made out of almost looks like scrap of plate metal or something, and it's bent or fashioned into shape. So typically ends up having a lot of rounded edges and things. But it varies, and it just depends on the tastes. So when I freestyle stuff like this, I tend to try to keep the printer's capabilities in mind. And in my experience, I find that the rounded edges end up looking better than sharp edges with my 3D prints. You could leave it as a sharp edge too. It'd look just fine. If anybody knows a way to select an edge that is repeating in a circle, like all the ones I had to select there, an easier way than selecting each one by one, definitely let me know in the comments below, because yeah, it's a pain in the butt. Select 20 of those by hand, and then of course if you click off somewhere or mess up, then you got to do it all over again. And I'm definitely not an expert at Fusion 360, so if you know a better way to do that, let me know. So here's where I start doing the adornment up top. So I created an offset plane that gets me basically centered with the middle of the cage. and this allows me to basically go straight up with a sketch from the top. So climbing in the z-axis, and basically the idea that I'm going for is to create some kind of shape that you would typically see on like a staff handle, or maybe a wizard or mage armor. They've always got these um, wispy shapes, or sometimes their shoulder pieces have like these crazy things that are shooting off of them, and they're I don't know, Arabian might not be the right word, but I don't know. They look wizardy. I don't know how else to say it. So I just kind of pulled a shape out of my head, and that I thought might look kind of cool. And here I'm just playing with the angles, trying to find a shape that looks um, how I want it, I guess, or what I had pictured in my mind. And again, the same time when you're doing stuff like this, keep your printer in mind, because a lot of printers, can't do overhangs really well. So make sure that when you're doing this kind of a shape, this organic shape, that um, you pick something that your printer is going to be capable of without support material. Because on features like this, when you add support material, then you got to start doing sanding and a bunch of other stuff that, in my opinion, on very small things such as this, make it not worth it. So here I'm doing the revolve, and yet again, it switches to cut instead of join. I'll never get that. But here we've got kind of a little neat adornment on the top of the cage. Maybe it's not your taste, but I thought it was neat. So at this point, it's basically done, and I'm going to save it as an STL and get it ready to print.
So you've just seen the design of the Dungeons and Dragons cage. So here's the figurine I used to measure the max dimensions. This is the largest character that we have right now from our D&D kit that we bought. And so here's the cage going on top. So I used the MakerBot translucent red filament. Never used this before, and it came out okay. Definitely the top has some artifacts, and I didn't use any support material when I printed this. So the side band came out just fine. It's level all throughout, very flat. So that's the fans working real well there. But the top, and my guess is because this slight incline as it comes up, definitely got some artifacts. I'll tell you what, I didn't realize how small this top piece would be once it printed out. I just winged it, but I'm amazed that it came out in almost the shape that I designed. So I think I'm going to print maybe another one of these, and maybe a different filament. I'm not sure. I did this at 1.0 extrusion rate, and I'm thinking that maybe the top would be better if I did 0.9, because this filament seems a little stringy, even though I only printed this at 200. So, but it's definitely adhere. I mean, I'm not going to crush it, but you can see I'm giving it a pretty good squeeze, and it's really nice and sturdy. So, yeah. So there it is, the D&D cage. I might throw this up on the store page on our website and see if anybody wants to buy one. Um, I'll be printing some different kinds and different filaments. I've got wood filament. I've got a copper filament that actually has copper infill. So I think that might be kind of neat to see. And I'm not going to make any more videos about the different kinds of filaments I use to print this, but I will put them on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. So you can check it out there. And if I do add these to the store page, I'll also post about it on social media. I won't make another video about it. But hopefully they come out a little bit better in some of the other filaments. But overall, though, I think it's really neat. And it's going to work for our games. So until next video, thanks for watching.